Change minutes.
I could now call to order the Planning Commission regular meeting for October 19th, 2023. We apologize for being a few minutes late, but this concluded our special meeting. I will ask now that the clerk will call roll.
Anderson. Here. Patrick.
Here.
Broker. Here. Gardner.
Here.
Gaunt. Here. O'Shea.
Still here.
And man.
I must.
Here. In front of you in the packet is the agenda for tonight's meeting. Is there any comments in regards to the agenda? Seeing none, do we have a motion to approve the agenda?
I make a motion to approve the agenda.
Second? Shay? This will be a voice vote. All those in favor of the agenda, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Nay. Approved. Also in front of you is the minutes from our regular meeting of September 21st, 2023. Were there any comments or changes necessary that anyone found? Seeing none, we have a motion to approve the minutes.
So moved.
Moved by Gaunt, second.
Second.
CJ. All those in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? None. Carries. Moves us to item number 4 on tonight's agenda, which is public comments on the agenda items themselves. If you are in the room or online and would you like to address us, please come up or raise your hand online. Limit your comments to 3 minutes. First, introduce yourself, name and address. And on this public comment, tell us which one of the agenda items that you're going to be speaking, or which one of the agenda items, what you're speaking about relates to. Later in tonight's meeting, we do have a general public comment, but this public comment session is related to agenda items only. Anyone in the room that would like to come up and address us at this time?
Mark Klungel, 747 Water Street. I've talked to many of you during this past week because I got kind of surprised by this new ordinance proposal. Last time I attended a planning meeting was in June, and I missed July and August primarily because of the short-term rental meetings. So I was extremely surprised because we were tipped off that, hey, have you seen this? I was assured that originally this was whole proposed waterfront development was waterfront only. We were sure that was all done. The moratorium was on waterfront only. The work was being done on waterfront only, as far as we knew. Now we find out that all of the zoning is being changed, that affects us drastically. I read one of the reports from the consultant that said that Mill Pond would not be affected by any of this proposal, and we were drastically affected by the proposal that's being changed here. And we're asking that this be reconsidered and that our zoning remain the same. This is very unusual to have this surprise type of zoning where you're drastically changing the zoning on the properties that we own. It would make our properties non-conforming. We have plans on building that have been years in the making. You know, this is something where you buy a property 20 years ago with the hope you could be able to grow into it. We have, one building there and we want to grow. We've got architectural plans work in the process. And all of a sudden I see zoning changes that makes it impossible for us to build, makes the property impossible to use. And the current zoning allows everything there. All our plans are in place to use the zoning that's there. And I don't know why we have to be included in the waterfront property because we're not waterfront property. So I'm asking you to reconsider this and take a look and to give us more warning. So we are dependent on the ordinances and the city council members you know, when you buy a piece of property, that they're not gonna change everything on you. The ordinances are in place. When you buy it, it should stay in place. And changing that should be looked at very, very carefully and very seldom. So, to look at something this drastic change, I don't think it's fair to the property owners. A lot of them don't catch this because you notice the planning changes unless you're doing a project or you're planning something. These things sneak through. The property owners really never see them. And normally, in the past, I'd get a call from Kirk, or I get a phone call from Cindy. Hey, this is what we're talking about. You know, we had to run across this haphazardly. There's no letters going out to the property owners that are affected in these changes. So they can't at least find out what's going on early in the game. You're up to the point of writing ordinances already, and there's no real talk about what's happening to the property owners. So please reconsider what you're looking at there. Thank you.
Thanks,
you,
Mark.
Anyone else in the room want to address an agenda item? Please come forward.
I'm Patty Beery and I reside at 331 Grand Street in the city of Saugatuck, and I own property 318 Butler Street. It is our gift shop. It is what it is. We've owned on the hill for almost 40 years now, and our business will be 10 years old in the winter. So I come speaking as a full-time lifelong resident of Saugatuck and a permanent business owner on the issue of the pop-up patios. To be clear, I am not opposed to pop-up patios. But in speaking with other residents, citizens, and business owners, we have some questions, concerns, and perhaps some suggestions. For us, the day after Labor Day, we see a significant increase in the age of the people that are coming to Saugatuck and shopping in our store. We're no longer seeing the strollers and the young families, the college kids, and I'm talking about Monday through Friday. We certainly see all of those customers on the weekends, but during the week, and we are open 7 days a week year round, as some of the businesses are. September through December is as busy for us as the tourist season is for us. People are shopping with a purpose now. They're shopping for holiday. And like I said, the average age goes up. The concern is because of the age of these people and limited parking, and parking will always be, you know, the dreaded parking situation. It's difficult for them to find someplace to park. Many of them are not physically able to go many blocks distance. There isn't a parking shuttle anymore up on the hill. The school spaces are occupied by students and faculty. So where are they to go? They're coming here, the day trippers, expecting town to be less busy and be able to find parking and all that good stuff. But these day trippers come and they shop, and then they go to the restaurants and eat. Our concern is that the leases for the pop-up patios run from April 1st through November 30th, is my understanding. We were wondering if that might be able to be changed to something like May 1st through September 30th, because April, October, and November, the weather. Okay, so in addition to the inclement weather, the parking spaces being taken, there's nobody in those parking spaces, and these people are coming to town to shop with no place to park, and there they sit empty. The other concern is that many of the places that lease the parking spaces are not open at lunchtime. And so again, there sit the spaces. So could there be some more regulation on perhaps, you know, they need to be open 6 days a week, or, you know, some sort of requirement? I don't have the answers for that, but just something to consider. One of the questions when I talk to residents and business owners is that they are concerned, where does the money go that is generated from, I believe it's $200 a space to $250 a space. They want to know, where does that money go and how does it directly benefit the taxpayers?
Great.
Okay, I know my 3 minutes is up.
That's correct.
Maybe I'll talk again at the end.
We appreciate it very much.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks, Patty.
Anyone else in the room? Laura?
Hi, I'm Laura Durham from 747 Water Street. And I'd kind of like to echo what Mark Klungel had to say. This new rezoning of 3 of my parcels that I own is greatly affecting me. And when you look at the piece of paper we were handed today, number D, waterfront development, review draft zoning ordinance language. Why would the 9 owners plus the condominiums ever think that this would affect them? None of us are waterfront owners. So I'm asking that that piece of property, all those 9 owners, actually more because of all the condominium owners, be removed from this because we're not waterfront owners. We had no idea that this was going on. By the grace of God, someone tipped me off. And I said, no, we don't own waterfront. So this is extremely misleading to property owners. So I'm asking that you reconsider. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else in the room? Anyone online that would like to make public comment at this time? Seeing none, we will close out the first public comment section of the evening. Underneath old business, we do not have any. Which will take us then on to new business. And the first item of our new business is the 118 Hoffman, which will require a public hearing as well as our site plan review for a restaurant and expanded outdoor dining. At this time, I will ask Ryan if he would like to address us and give us a background on.
Certainly, Mr. Chair. Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. The applicant is the owner of 118 Hoffman. He's seeking retroactive approval for establishing the Sienna Cafe restaurant and associated outdoor seating area, as well as construction of a shed and placing an outdoor freezer on the subject property. As you indicated, this is before you this evening for a public hearing to consider a special land use for the restaurant as well as a restaurant with expanded outdoor eating, as well as site plan review. And so it's a little bit of history here. The city received a complaint a few months ago related to a shed and freezer that were installed on the property and its kind of appearance. And looking into that, discovered that those items were built without historic district permits and without zoning permits. And as I looked, evaluated that further, discovered that the Sienna Cafe began construction on the restaurant in 2021. The owner bought the property in 2021. Well, your zoning ordinance actually changed in late 2020 to make restaurants, instead of being a permitted use in the Water Street East zoning district, they were changed to be a special land use in the Water Street East zoning district. And so because the property hadn't received a use permit prior to establishing the restaurant and hadn't received special land use and site plan approval, I brought these concerns to the owner's attention, and he's submitted those applications to you this evening. And I apologize, Mr. Chair, I can't see the room, but I know the owner was planning on being at your meeting tonight. I believe is prepared to present his application and answer any questions you may have.
All right, with that, then we will call to order the public hearing for 118 Hoffman Street. And Ryan, I know the first item on the public hearing was the summary. And thank you. I think you've already given the summary, so I don't believe we have to repeat it at this time. The presentation of the applicant would follow next. And Ryan, did you say the applicant was online or?
We're here.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, I don't see him online. Erhan, is he in? should be in the
He's here,
room?
yes. He's here.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yep.
Hello.
Hi.
I don't know what I'm supposed to be doing here. So
Mhm.
they just told me to come over here and I don't know what else to say. I mean, you have my application, I believe.
We do have the application. Is there anything that,
If there's anything that I can answer, help you understand better. Or if you have any
There's-
questions, please.
no, I guess if we've all had time to kind of read through it, but if you could just kind of, I mean, you put in a very nice history that's included in the kit.
Right.
If you can just kind of walk us through kind of, I think as Ryan did, from the 2018
How
through.
it started. The 118 Hoffman Street building, I don't know if you know its history. I've been living in Saugatuck maybe 20 years right now. And the building was in shambles most of the times, and it's been changing hands as rentals, and the owner never took care of it. And it's been on sale for the last 10 years or so, I don't know. Oh, and eventually, I gathered up enough money to buy it from William, the ex-owner. And I spoke to Cindy that time. It was late 2020 when I had intentions to buy. And she told me, yes, I can take over the building to make it a business there, permanent restaurant. I was thinking of moving my Boardwalk Deli and Fresh Basil Cafe over there and closing up the others since they are rentals. And so since then, I took it over and started construction through the Allegan County. They said you need to change the use of the building to the code as Michigan states, which I did. And then outdoor seating, again, Saugatuck City approved it, that I can use. And the patio, again, I changed the patio area as Historic Society approved it. And that's the reason I didn't know there was any other permits that I was supposed to get, which came up just recently. After 2 years, I've been running it. It's a successful business since 2 years. And the only reason I opened this business that I could just buy the building and do it as a rental, but I didn't want to. I really wanted to renovate that building, make it a nicer place. But then to do that, you need income. I assumed having my own business there would bring much more money than just rentals. So I went down to invest maybe $250,000 there at the moment to create the restaurant in order to sustain the building. And so I can go forward. And about the business, you all know it's a non-alcoholic place. And I hire in summer, mostly young people, students, to run the place. And I oversee everything because I run 3 businesses in the block. And I don't know what else to say. I'm sorry.
No, that's pretty good. No, I think it's just kind of gives that rundown that's in
Please
the,
let me explain if there are any concerns.
and I know I've probably on behalf of the city, I'm sure Ryan probably told you the same thing. Having the ordinance change and that being brought to your attention, we appreciate the position and we appreciate you bringing it to us, tonight. And it has been a very positive, change in my opinion there on Hoffman Street with the addition of, that venue. Any questions you guys have for the applicant before we open up for comment?
Just, he mentioned that historic district had approved it, yet I see in the Ryan's notes or comments that something had to go through historic yet,
It's the screening. You're still aware that for the screening, you need to
Yes,
go in
sir.
front of the
I
historic
have-
commission.
I have placed a shed and freezer in the backyard.
Yep.
In the beginning, I was thinking it's not seen from the street, so that's why I didn't think I needed permit, but then it came out that I need a permit. So now I need to change the look of it. So from street, like you can see that much of it,
Yeah,
which I will work on
And-
it
okay.
and I'll take care of it.
right.
That's
So
the
you
issue.
understand the application of
Yes,
Historic
I will
Society
go through
requirement.
whatever it's
You
required.
did it once already. Sounds like you know the
Yes.
path process. Okay, that was my only question.
Right. And I think it's the outdoor seating will kind of fall underneath whatever changes are made in our
Yes, sir.
requirements for the
I've
following
been
year. So
waiting
that
for
would,
your
yeah.
Approval of outdoor seating in
Exactly.
November, so it like every other
Every
restaurant.
person, exactly.
Yeah.
Yep. Very good.
Gonna ask for a point of order. Could we have him introduce himself and state his place of residence, please?
Oh, I thought he did. I'm sorry.
I can sit down or.
No, your name and where do you live?
Yeah, your name and
I am Erhan Kara. I live in Douglas. I run restaurants.
No, I
Inside.
know, I'm just asking for the record, so it's recorded.
That's what it's
that-
under. Yeah.
Oh,
That's
from that, but yes, please.
Erhan Kara.
Okay, we're good.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. We will move to public comments in regards to this application. If we have anyone that would like to address us, please come forward. If there's anyone online, raise your hand. And just introduce yourself with your name and address. Anyone in the room? Seeing none. Anyone online? Seeing none, we will close public comments regarding the applicant at 118 Hoffman Street. Did not have any correspondence that was related to it. So we closed the and it's commission deliberation. You know, I look at this and go ahead,
I would like to compliment the applicant
same here.
for his patience as well as for the completeness of the application and the fact that we can actually read it. Because often applications are submitted and they're unintelligible in terms of the writing. It's obvious that you cared very much and care very much. And so I just wanted to compliment you for that.
Thank you, Bobby. No, I would say the exact same thing as far as the application, the photos, the diligence that you have put forth. I can compliment that. And I think, you know, that if there's not any questions,
Thank you, Chairman Manson. Thank you for being here this evening to present to us. And sorry for the confusion over asking you to introduce yourself. That's just so we have the record check. So, from an important standpoint. Yes, again, I would echo Commissioner Gaughan's comments about your application and the completeness of it. Thank you very much for bringing everything to us. The thing that concerns me the most about this is not necessarily the applicant or the request. The background statement really got my interest. The special land use permit was not received for the restaurant use. No permits were secured for the shed and freezer. So I think your cafe has been in operation for 2 years. 2 years? Yeah, and watch it with interest. I think a great addition to the community. What concerns me from a city standpoint is how it got to this point.
I have why,
Yeah, why?
question mark, why?
Yes.
same here.
I'm not here to criticize, but this is another example of where the city, I think, falls short for its residents and its business owners. Not that you shouldn't have gotten to where you are today, but there should have been more engagement with you as a business owner when you started that work or understood what needed to be done in order to be compliant with the city. So, that plays into my decision process on this, but it's just another example where the city needs more enforcement, literally more resources to help business owners out. You did not want to be in this position. I have no issues with what you're requesting, and it just, that part really concerns me. You do not have anybody in the position that you're in.
And that was part of my comment. I'm so appreciative of his
Right,
patience
because it's
to.
an
respect
unfortunate
the
position.
process At this point, and be as complete as he's been.
Yeah,
So-
and I'm just surprised no one went and knocked on your door and said, hey, introduce myself, I'm from the city of Saugatuck, we see you've got some work going on, we'd like to talk with you about what's happening. It doesn't sound like that happened to you, is that correct? My expectation is that when a business such as yours begins work like this, someone has come and knocked on your door at some point and said, hi, I'm from the city of Saugatuck, I know you have some work underway. I'd like to talk with you about what you have planned. It sounds to me like that didn't take place.
Did not.
Thank you.
Nothing?
Given that, and I think it is a good comment that, and I will have to say, and I'm sure Ryan would probably agree, that over the last year plus, we have really seen it improvement in the way that we are trying to go through ordinances, the tracking of, what is happening within zoning enforcement. And partially this help in bringing it to the attention. But as we move forward, especially when we're looking at any zoning changes, if we're calling something special land use, it's kind of keeping on top of that, from a city administration standpoint. Given where we are at, there is a recommendation within our, kits that if we felt compelled to approve, we can make the approval contingent upon the receipt of the approval by the Historic Commission for the screening, as well as, the public right-of-way part, it was in our recommendation, I do think would be covered by any changes that we make to the overall ordinance changes regarding patios for 24 going forward.
Mr. Chair,
Yes,
Mr.
Ryan?
Chair, if I could, just on the patio requirement, so your zoning ordinance hasn't been changed. I mean, obviously tonight you're holding a public hearing on the expanded outdoor dining area regulations. But as it stands today, that ordinance hasn't changed, so he's essentially asking you for the sidewalk seating approval as part of his special land use approval. And site plan review on that this evening, so he would have to meet today's regulations, which requires the 5-foot clearance requirement on the sidewalk. So that's something that you would want to clarify as part of this site plan, because this site plan that's approval will be what he has zoning approval for going forward.
Okay. When I was looking and, if the applicant would please come back up, I forgot to ask that question. On your site plan, just so we can be clear, you were showing that there is 88 inches between your building and where your outdoor patio is, but then you have the two little chairs, which take up about 20 inches. So your the public walkway then would be approximately 62 to 66 inches of clearance between those little chairs sitting outside the windows and.
Yeah, in that point, yes. But also, there's chairs, basically they're about, with the table and the chairs, they're about this size.
Width wise, but then the other
Yeah,
direction.
like length, and the depth is about 20 inches.
Right.
Like those are for me, is not, it's just, I put it there because it looks nice.
Yeah.
It gives a more authentic look, but.
I
if
think
a
it's,
trouble, I can move them out,
we were just, one of the requirements would be that there is a 60-inch
Yes,
public walkway.
yes.
And if you have the 88, now from what I can see, like in the photos for each of the commissioners on page 41, if we're looking at the little table and chairs, and this is for you, this was the photo you
Correct.
submitted
Yeah,
here,
those are the.
where it looks like the sidewalk part, which was the 60 inches, because I was down there yesterday, is that wider area.
Right.
So that's 60 inches. And so long as these tables and chairs remain in the little
Yes,
separate area, then you still have the 60-inch. And that is your understanding that you must meet that, correct?
correct.
Steve, did you measure that? I'm just curious. I know it's
Yes,
60.
this here's 60, yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not on the.
It's
site
not on
plan.
here. And so it was kind of,
Yeah, so I was
it's
wondering
actually
if
about
you-
63 between the chair and because these chairs, like you were saying, they're about 20
20
inches.
inches,
of fr-
18 to 20 inches.
Right, off of it. And then if you measure over, you had about 63 inches remaining from what I was measuring, because it says there's 88. But
Right, but this, yeah.
and then the seating would be about 20 inches off of that, which gives you about 68 inches per this. I saw 63, but either way, it's greater than the 60.
Could be over 5 feet there.
Yes, yeah.
Space, yeah.
Yeah.
Unless you increase it, otherwise it's good. Otherwise, if you want more space, I can always remove them. It's no problem for me.
No, I think it just becomes more of the, if we make any approval subject to.
Sorry,
Yeah,
Vice
okay.
Chairman Mattson. The ultimate goal here is to be compliant with the zoning code. However, as a business owner, there's a lot of traffic down there with Wally's in your business. and
Correct,
so forth.
yes.
And so I always encourage business owners, remain in compliance the first thing, but if you see that there's issues with people not being able to get through.
Absolutely.
Then that needs to be brought back to the city so we can be aware of that too, but it's incumbent on the business owners to help us manage this.
Mhm.
So, and there's a lot, that's probably one of the busier travel
Correct.
blocks in the
Because
city,
Wally's creates the most traffic. My place
Right.
is still not that busy.
right?
So usually around Wally's is busy, really people are waiting. My area is not that busy. So if I ever get that busy, I might remove those things to create space. But so far, I didn't see any trouble.
I wish you the best of luck. I have memories of the businesses that were there before you, Flower Shop and some
Yeah.
others that were probably not as well maintained as what you're attempting to do. So I encourage you to, I think this is a great addition to the community. So,
Do we have anyone who would like to?
Well, while we have you up here, there was another comment I know in our packet that Ryan pointed out about the applicant demonstrating seating along the curb does not interfere with pedestrian travel or the opening of parked car doors. I don't know if you have
Yes.
thoughts on that.
Correct. I put this around the tree. I put this raised blockage, whatever you call it, to create a garden. So I can put flowers in there. That is basically, it's raised like about this high directly from the next to the street, and the doors doesn't open very well. I am aware of that. So I don't know if it's for you a requirement to have space there. I mean,
Yeah, I don't.
it's a decorative, but I can remove that.
No, and Ryan may be able to speak more to this. I've read his comment a little differently. Maybe I misunderstood it to be about. Like, I'm looking at this picture. I think he was talking about like this space. right
Yes,
Here, for instance, and then not the decorative. Area around the tree, but if you're on.
Oh,
the
tables.
side. Yeah,
Oh, tables, no problem. There's plenty of space from the chair table to car. There's no
Okay.
trouble there. I'm pretty sure there's plenty of, because the position of the chairs are away from the doors opening of the cars, so there's no trouble. The only thing is that blue piece of thing around the tree, that
right.
is pretty much curb size, about,
Yeah.
this much space that may create door opening trouble. That's the thing I know.
Okay.
yeah, Chairman Mans, this is more a question for our zoning administrator, perhaps maybe Mr. Jurasik. Does the city zoning code have a requirement for the amount of space between the parking spot and anything that's on public right of way for a door to open? We have other properties in town that's an issue. So the concern here is that when a car pulls up is that they can easily open the door and get out.
They can get out.
And not just your property, but just around town generally, because I think there are some areas where that's maybe not being adhered to. But I want to know what the exact compliant or what the exact code says, if it says anything. about
Yes.
this at all. And that's not a question for you, that's a question to
I
our
understand.
professional.
Yeah, and so Mr. Chair, I understand the question, and so there's not like a specific dimensional distance that's in the zoning ordinance. It says that seating shall be arranged to not interfere with pedestrian travel or the opening of car doors. So it's really within your evaluation as planning commissioners to determine, how they have it laid out on their site plan and what they're proposing, whether or not that would have an impact on car doors opening, and to what extent you're comfortable with them being, a certain distance from the edge of the curb and car doors being able to be opened.
So not a strict requirement, more of a judgment.
Well, it sounds like you just said for seating, so it's more of addressing this outdoor seating thing. The
Right.
flower box in some of the other places around town is not necessarily seating, so that's a different thing.
Right. In that city.
Ready to move?
Are we ready? If no further comment, do we have a movement towards motion?
I'll take a shot at it. After the page. I would make a motion to approve the application for 118 Hoffman for site plan for restaurant with expanded outdoor dining with the following conditions: that the applicant, one, clarify outdoor seating locations and demonstrate compliance with the 5-foot clear area requirement, which we've discussed. Number 2 is that the applicant shall demonstrate that seating along the curb does not interfere with pedestrian travel or the opening of parked car doors. If the applicant can demonstrate compliance with outdoor seating requirements and the planning commission is open to approving the project, approval shall be contingent upon applicants securing all necessary variances for the project, historic district commission approval, and city council approval for use of the right of way.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Gant.
And I don't know if it needs to be in
This-
the motion, but to allow the zoning administrative authority to work with the applicant to get those items completed.
Thank you.
Ready?
Yep, we'll call roll.
Sure. Anderson,
Approve.
Patrick,
Yes.
Broker, Gardner,
Yes.
Gaunt,
Yes.
Lachey,
Yes.
and Mans.
Yes. You're good, approved. Thank you for your attendance
much.
this evening. Thank you
Appreciate it.
again for your diligence and for giving Sagatuck another avenue of a restaurant. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Moving on, our next agenda item relates to the property at 120 Mary Street. This also requires a public hearing for rezoning from the C2 Water Street East District, request to rezone from the C2 Water Street East District to the R4 City Center Residential. Before I ask for Ryan, I will go ahead and open up the public hearing for the 120 Mary Street property, and at this time, I'll ask the zoning administrator to give us a summary of what's before us.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The owners of 120 Mary Street have submitted a rezoning request to you to rezone 120 Mary Street from the Water Street East zoning district, the City Center Transitional Residential District. Currently at 120 Mary Street, there's a single-family dwelling on the property. The applicants have long-term goals to transition the single-family dwelling to a bed and breakfast. But they're not at that point yet where they would like to do that. In the meantime, to raise some capital, they had plans to rent out the single-family dwelling as a short-term rental. The Water Street East zoning district actually prohibits short-term rentals on the first floor. They have to be on the second or third floor, which prohibits this single-family dwelling from being short-term rented. So the applicant is proposing to rezone the property to the to the City Center Transitional Residential District, which actually abuts this piece of property, which would allow the single-family dwelling to be used as a short-term rental without the restriction on the floor requirement. Both residential or both zoning districts do allow for the bed and breakfast use. There's some further analysis that's required by the zoning ordinance as it relates to looking at your master land use plan, taking a look at the uses that would potentially change for the property depending on if there's a rezoning or not, looking at public services and facilities and whether or not they would be adversely impacted, and then looking at whether the allowed uses for the rezoning would be equally or better suited to the area than the uses allowed under the current zoning of the land. So Mr. Jurasik has actually evaluated those four factors for you, and those are in your packet. Myself or Mr. Jurasik are happy to answer any questions. And again, I apologize, Mr. Chair, if the applicants are potentially in the room. I don't see them on Zoom, so, and I know they're aware of the meeting, so I believe that they were going to be prepared to present their request to you as well.
Very good. Thank you, Ryan. Presentation by the applicants. Which is Mike Friedman. All right, Ryan, Mike is not here, so.
Yeah, and I know they asked for the Zoom link, which was provided to them. And I know I confirmed the date with them as well, so.
Ryan, do we need to have the applicant here?
Now, I'll have to double check your bylaws and make sure you don't have some sort of like specific rule that applicants be present to consider their case. I don't think there's any legal requirement that they be present for you to consider their request. They've submitted an application. Mr. Woody's available to answer that question if you'd like.
Yes, I don't see anything. I couldn't find anything where it says they would have to be, but
We have our attorney.
David, are you familiar with that at all?
There's not like a legal requirement, the applicant to be here, I mean, certainly if you have questions that you would want to direct to the applicant, the applicant can table it with the applicant. We have sufficient information on the application.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, I couldn't hear what Mr. Woody had to say. Could you repeat that?
Sorry, Ryan. I said there's no legal requirement for the applicant to be present and that so long as the planning commission feels that there is, sufficient information provided in the application, there's not any questions they have for the applicant, it would be appropriate for them to act on the application tonight.
Then we will move on to public comments regarding this application. If you have comments, please come forward in the room or raise your hand if you are online. Anyone in the room that would like to make public comments? Seeing none. Anyone online? Oops, sorry. We do have one.
Mark Klungel, 747 Water Street. I know a little bit about this and this property, for most of you know, it's Mark Beckman's family home. His diapers were changed there. So it's been around for a long time. It's a regular home. We ran into this is kind of an obscure thing that came up, that short-term rentals aren't allowed in this district in homes. It's residential area. I say it's closer to town, but it was kind of an obscure thing. The difference on this house is, vacation rentals are allowed on the second and third floor. Well, that's what he's asking to do, because the main floor, which is half above ground, because this is a raised house, he's asking for that. But changing the zoning would be very beneficial for him because it's part of Wickwood Inn anyway. So I would hope you would consider his application in favor. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. Anyone else in the room? Anyone online? With that, we'll close the public comment section. There were no supporting comments from the correspondence. And so we'll close out that. We'll talk about the commissioner deliberation. One, I agree with what Marcus said. To me, it makes absolutely no sense in our zoning that what is currently allowed in Water Street North provides for short-term rental with no restrictions. If I go to the district directly to the east of it, which is the CER, the transitional, it allows for short-term rental, no restriction. But yet the Water Street East currently has a restriction of second and third floor, which kind of relates to something we'll be discussing two items later on our agenda when we talk about the waterfront. If we were looking at any changes that we would be recommending where we're taking the east side of Water Street and combining it with another zone like Water Street East, I think we would have to look at all the items where we have discrepancies. And one of the areas this is an area where we have a discrepancy. Water Street North currently has short-term rental, no restriction as a permitted use. If you were talking about it this later, moving this to Water Street, making it Water Street East, Water Street East has that restriction of the second or third floor. So if we were to look at that, when we're talking about the waterfront development and making changes to Water Street East to bring it in compliance with what was allowed by Water Street North, if we were to recommend such a change, then Water Street East would actually have short-term rentals, and this wouldn't even be necessary. But it's before us right now because we haven't made any decisions on any changes that with Water Street North the waterfront of preservation or Water Street East. But so therefore, we're being asked to kind of look at this. I've been told, I was talking with David, that we can't approve this. We can have it changed so that it would give them the ability to have a license now. If we make changes down the road to Water Street East where it allows for short-term rentals, then it could be always moved back into that zone or kept in to see the R4 zone. But either way, I wouldn't see anything that would prohibit us from approving this. Other,
Did I understand that you have you did some research to have some points that Ryan mentioned? You looked at this? Sorry.
Yes, sir. I prepared the October 19th, the October 13th report, and I walked through the 4 standards of approval for.
Oh,
zones.
okay, so you did okay.
Yes, sir. So, so first being the master plan, which it's close to the boundary line between the commercial and the.
Right on the line.
The other line. With the master plan, it's really a high level review. So, on a parcel by parcel basis, during a rezoning, that's when you could really look at parcels and whether or not they should be on one side line or the other. The other points were the allowable uses would be compatible with the ones in the area. Since this particular building and its use are very similar to the ones that face Butler Street, I don't see, it would actually be affiliated with the Wickwood.
correct.
In number 2 is satisfied because the uses would be compatible with those around. 3 is concerning public facilities and infrastructure. Obviously, with a rezoning, you don't have the infrastructure stress that a commercial building may cause. So certainly the downzoning in this case satisfies standard 3. And then lastly, standard 4 are the uses equal or better than what's allowed in the current district. And it is compatible, I think, with both districts. And so I think it's the discretion to the planning commission to determine if it is appropriate for this district.
Thank you. Yeah, that was my question.
And I think it's
Just
met all
what
the
was in
standards.
David, just out of curiosity, those standards, are they just kind of the standards one applies, are they in our code, state law? Just curious.
Yes, the 4 are from the zoning ordinance. So it's in these are verbatim, the 4 that we would consider during rezoning.
For rezoning.
And these are pretty standard. When we write up zoning ordinances, we want to consider master plan, compatible uses, whether or not it's affects infrastructure. Some even goes as far as to talk about the natural environment, since it's an urban environment, that's not as much of a priority. But it's a pretty standard set of review standards.
What might be unintended consequences of doing this, with the switching, making the zone changes that we didn't think would impact Mark and Laura that we realize now? Is there, I just want to be sure we're thinking that through is one question. And the other thing, I sort of feeling like we're jerry-rigging a zone for a short-term rental, and sort of philosophically that makes me bristle.
And,
Well-
could I ask that that we pull up page, if we display page 45 of the packet?
Right.
That might emphasize, if you could, please.
And while we're waiting for that, and David's up there, well, David, my questions are similar to Holly's in a sense. And I think it's because of all of the work that we're doing in terms of the waterfront, as well as the sensitivities around that we've learned about as we've studied short-term rentals. Just like I always worry about an exception for one. If it makes sense to make an exception for one, why wouldn't you look at the entire zone?
Correct. Page 45.
So, and maybe again, it's just my sensitivity. It's like, it's precedent setting. Because as soon as we do something like this, it is precedent setting. And again, that would argue for looking at the zone in its entirety versus just one property exception. And again, just my sensitivity around all of these issues these days is that, you know, it doesn't seem that anything these days is a minor anything, and you describe it as a minor departure. I don't know that I'm just like, I don't think when it comes to rezoning and everything that we're undertaking, which I am fully supportive of, but I don't think that while one property may be minor, I think this has broader implications. And so I would just ask for all of that. Yes.
Yeah, I appreciate the question that Commissioner Anderson brought up as well as your comments, Commissioner Vaughn. And I asked that page 45 you brought up because I think it emphasizes the concern that I have too, is that if you look at the map and let's presume this is approved, the map color changes and all of a sudden you look at that and say, wait a minute, why is that one small spot?
Right.
Even though I know Mr. Jurasik in his report said it's not considered to be spot zoning. You know, this, in my mind, will always be known as the Beacon House. You know, it's a residential house, and not that I want to stand in the way of progress and allow business owners to be able to develop their properties. I put that hat on, and then I take that hat off and put on my zoning hat, and I'm thinking, wait a minute, is this something that we are going to start, and all of a sudden we have subsequent properties in the same zone, and further, all of a sudden we're literally just trying to get this constantly. I'm not saying there's a line in the sand here, but that I have some of the same concerns from a just community standpoint as well as a zoning plan standpoint. I'm struggling.
And I agree. And I think that's what I tried to open with is, and I know this is before our fourth item of discussion, which is the zoning provisions that we were going to be discussing regarding the creation of a waterfront zone. And the comment relates back that the zone Water Street East currently is the only zone downtown that has a restriction on short-term rental that can be second and third floor. If you were in Water Street North, you can have short-term rental. If you're in the CER, the R4 right next to it, you can have short-term rental. So that's why I was opening saying that we really need to kind of address why is that there in the Water Street East? Is it necessary? And if we are making zoning recommendations regarding the waterfront, then if we were to recommend that Water Street East have a permitted use of short-term rental, like the two neighborhoods or the two zones on either side of it, then this would no longer even be an issue because they could stay in Water Street East and have short-term rental. However, since we haven't made those changes, those proposals yet to city council, this applicant is asking for a rezoning, which rezoning is allowed in our code, and they have the ability to ask for a rezone based upon the four requirements which they have met. I do agree. I don't particularly like seeing them want to carve it out, especially if I think that there's a possibility down the road, if short-term rentals were allowed unrestricted in Water Street East, then would we, want to consider putting it back in Water Street East? I don't know. It's like, do you move it over and then put it back? Now, having it be the same owner, now that changes things though, because that's one of the main reasons why you would ask for a rezoning. If I was buying a parcel that's located right next to the zone that is my primary, and I would like to have it zoned the same, that would be to me a very justified reason why I'm asking for a rezone. It's not a new owner who's come in, who has no affiliation with the parcel that's located directly to the east of it, which is the Wickwood Inn. So I think that does factor in as to, is it reasonable for us to consider it? It's not a one-off. It's a one-off in the fact that it's an owner who's in a different zone who has bought an adjacent property and would like to have both properties in the same zone.
Except that owner knew that when they bought this property.
But they also knew that, but they also,
And you
But you-
find out before you buy the property. that
but they
there's
also
something
knew that they
wrong.
had the ability to ask for rezoning.
That's-
And then they looked at the
that's
reason,
Crapshoot they took.
right? And you look at the rezoning standards and they said they meet all the standards for rezoning, as David has pointed out.
But it's really getting at a short-term rental issue through a zoning change, which it's sort of backing into, I think if we
But can,
approved that, then, arguably anybody on that row mean, anybody in that zone could, or in the old zone, could say, well, I want a short-term rental on the ground floor.
Is
And,
there any reason why it's not currently?
you know,
other than
I
it's
mean,
currently in our
that's a
zoning?
short-term rental discussion, not a zoning. I mean, I
Well,
think
that's
we
just-
just need to have I think we need to contain the topic where I would love to tackle the short-term rental stuff
Well,
soon,
no.
and maybe we do that, but I
In-
think rezoning to accommodate one person's desire to short-term rent out of compliance, just, that doesn't make sense to me.
And if I could add something, I don't know if I'm supposed to talk to this or not, but, let's pull it back a little bit. Not only others in this waterfront east asking for variant, rezoning, but in the entire city. Anybody in the entire city says, okay, and I'm sorry, I disagree with I don't know the technical definition of spot zoning. This sure smacks of spot zoning to me, taking a single parcel from one zone to another, simply because the property owner and the adjacent property wants it. It looks like, it looks like a carve out to me. I could see anybody anywhere in the city going with the same request. And I'm glad you used the word precedent, because this is exactly what we have to look at and be very, very careful. You can set precedent and you can make exceptions and you can hang your hat on and say, we did this here, but there are very, very good reasons which do not apply elsewhere in our city. And I honestly don't know that those apply. I don't know of reasons here that apply. And simply saying that the 4 requirements of amendment to the zoning map under section 154.176, part B, 1 through 4, which he referenced in our report. It almost smacks of, and no offense, finding answers to fit what somebody may want to have happen. And so my inclination is that, as I said, a property owner should do due diligence. A property owner should factor in all of the demands or potentials in buying a parcel, and not try to elbow or force us to make a change simply because, oh, well, I already did this. I don't find that a valid reason either. So I think we're setting a bad precedent to do this. I think it is spot zoning. And I think rather than, in addition to others in Water Street East that may come to us and say this, I could see people coming and changing zoning for any number of reasons, for any reason they want, not even related to short-term rentals, related to, I want to open a commercial operation on the hill, on a corner in the residential. And, I bought it for that purpose. So, give it to me.
I see it as valid, points. The setting a precedent, I guess, when you kind of look at it, we have to ask ourselves, having this being an owner who owns the immediate parcel to the east and is basically looking to add this parcel to their current zone, would that be justification? So that in the future, if somebody came in, they wanted to have one parcel rezoned, but that's their only parcel, it's not adjacent to their existing or other property. You're not really setting a precedent. You'd be setting a precedence if you allow that to happen versus somebody who has already got a parcel who they have just purchased that's adjacent. Just asking that for consideration.
Something that I think I might just contribute that might help some of the planning commission's discussion. I think maybe we're getting out a little bit far into the weeds based on the discussion of the fact that the owner wants to use this property for a short-term rental. This is like just a vanilla rezoning request. It's not a conditional rezoning request. So there's nothing in granting this request that would tie this use to a short-term rental. I mean, it's just, they can use it for any of the uses that are allowed in the R4 district, whether that's a short-term rental or something else. And so I think as the, just a vanilla rezoning request, is this appropriate to grant any of the uses for the R4 district as opposed to the district it's in now?
Did you read the overview?
Yes, I did. I understand that that's maybe what's driving the request, but there's nothing in your, I mean,
The
the
application.
four standards don't examine a particular use. It examines whether the uses that are allowed in that district would be disruptive. I understand that the application is presenting this, that's the reason why it's being presented. But there's nothing that would stop the applicant from using the property for any of the uses permitted in the R4 zoning district. It doesn't necessarily have to be a short-term rental.
And technically, it's more, like he was saying, it's down zoning from where it currently is.
Well, to your point, it strikes me that if you do remove this specific desire to use this parcel, and maybe I'm thinking ass backwards, but that makes it even less reasonable why to rezone it. I mean, he wants to rezone it for a specific reason. And that reason is not allowed in the district it's currently in. If you were to say, okay, well, this is just a vanilla rezoning request, I'm not sure there are any because, you know, everybody wants to rezone for a reason. Nobody just walks in and says, I want to rezone because, gosh, I woke up this morning and thought, you know, the parcel next to me should be rezoned. If you remove the purpose for rezoning, then it makes it even less reasonable to rezone it for the purpose of precedent.
I mean, I guess from my perspective, every request is evaluated on its own merits. And so
We're not a ZBA, for example.
Right,
Not a
right, I
zoning board of
agree, but
appeals.
you do have the power to rezone. And if someone's desire to use their property for a use that's permitted in a different zoning district, but not the property they're currently zoned in, I mean, that's the driving request behind almost any request to rezone, right?
Correct.
And I
And
guess
that's
maybe
exactly what you said we should ignore, that they want you do exactly that. And just
I'm not saying,
pieces of vanilla zoning request, whatever that means.
I guess maybe the focus on the use is the only thing that I thought we were getting out into the weeds on. You can certainly take the application on its face value and maybe I'm not sure where you're coming from, if you want to elaborate a little bit.
But for, to use a legal term of art, but for his desire to turn this into a short-term rental, he wouldn't have been making the request.
Okay. And I guess my question is, you know, what non-conditional rezoning request, if that's something would be considered problematic in approving or denying this, what rezoning request would, you know, not fail that standard? I mean, I think that, to me, that is the driving force behind any rezoning request.
Sure, and yes, and that's why I go, we have to be very careful in setting precedent, because any Tom, Dick, or Harry in this town, and gosh, there's plenty of them, will come forward to us and say, oh, you did this, I want to do that. And that
that's why
makes me
there's
very
the
concerned and very nervous.
Standards in the zoning ordinance that have to be evaluated as to whether or not the rezoning should be approved.
Sure. Yeah, no, you're correct. And you know,
So to that point, I can't help but notice the including but not limited to, language around those four factors, which I agree to give us some flexibility to have this broader discussion.
Certainly.
And again, it is an applicant that
Mr. Chair.
owns.
Mr. Chair, I'm sorry to interrupt. I just, Mr. Chair, can you make sure that folks are speaking directly into their microphone? It was difficult to hear Ann there. It's difficult to hear Mr. Gardner at times too. So thank you guys. Yeah.
I've noticed on our videos, it can be hard to hear. I think, yeah, maybe it's the closest to a microphone is the issue. But I was just saying, Brian, that, you know, just pointing out the I just wanted to point out the four factors have including but not limited to language, so. Seem to allow for thinking beyond just the four factors.
which is a good point.
And again, I believe that I see that this is a owner who had a parcel and who was buying an adjacent parcel and does not want to own two pieces of land in two different zones, which is what brought about the request for rezoning. The fact of what they want to do with it, I believe, doesn't factor in to the decision. Is it reasonable that somebody would be able to buy a parcel that is adjacent to what they currently own and then ask for it to be rezoned so that their entire property that they own is all in one zone versus two. Is that reasonable?
Well, I guess I didn't realize the Wickwood Inn isn't also, it's not just south of this. I didn't look.
It's right here.
Just east of it.
It's just east. So basically,
Kind of-
you're making their parcel, it's all one parcel that would all fall into the CER.
Oh, is it not on? You were off. Well, that was.
Now I can hear you great.
Mine wasn't on either. Well, thank you.
So
Well,
that's,
maybe we can do
That'll
that
explain
before our meeting.
that's why you couldn't hear him, Ryan.
I will say I tried to listen to last month's meeting on YouTube and couldn't hear anything. So that's a good.
We're having
Tip.
some audio issues too. That's
Oh,
been
okay.
resolved, but talking into the mic.
Yeah, if you're not
Definitely.
actually talking directly into the mic, it's like if you're looking across the paper, you can't hear, but if you're talking into the mic, you can.
Okay.
Chairman Mans,
Yes.
I don't know if this is an apt analogy, but it's thinking back to Commissioner Lachey's comment about, and I've had this experience in my neighborhood with Historic District Commission, property owners buying properties and not realizing they're in the historic district and learning the lesson after buying the property. I think it's incumbent upon someone that buys a piece of property to understand the zoning, if you're in a historic district, et cetera. Having said that, there's also we should be here to allow folks to, make changes and make requests. The short-term rental issue is important, but I'm trying to make the analogy of if I bought a property on the border of Illinois or Indiana and Michigan, for instance. I didn't like the laws of Michigan, so I want to make it part of Indiana. All right. Now that's a huge thing. And this is small in comparison to that, but I think about, okay, there's a reason why these districts exist in the way that they were platted out for a very specific purpose. And that's to begin to keep the separation of use and separation of intensity. And, spot zoning in my definition would be a district that's not contiguous to a district that the change is being requested. So I pull back and say, okay, what risk do we have if we say yes? And what risk do we have if we say no? I'm inclined to say no, just because I think it does take us down a path that we might go down. I can't say for sure that will happen. But on what purpose on what ground could I say no to this?
Correct.
Does it not meet the longer term plan that the city has for its zoning code, for its master plan? Does it, is that maybe too high of a level to think about this? I don't know. I'm struggling with this for, I think, some of the reasons some of the other commissioners have expressed.
And I struggle with it, but then I always go back to some of the stuff we learned in some of our coursework. If it meets all the standards, then it's always been said, if it meets the standards, then you must approve. It's met the standards for a request for rezoning.
I don't read it that we must approve. I'm looking right at the provision. Maybe I'm missing it. I have nothing against these property owners, other than the fact they didn't care enough to show up, but, and I think that has some impact, honestly. I'll be honest with you. You seemed, and I'm not putting anything on you, but you seem to be their advocate tonight and.
No.
I'm not saying that you have any interest or anything, but there's a vacuum here. And you seem to be making proposals of perhaps that they should be making, and
Well,
there's
I was
nothing
just
wrong
going
about
by
that.
the
Don't get me
report.
wrong.
I was just going by the report that I read in advance
That's it.
of the 4 requirements for a request for rezoning.
Talking to myself.
And if I'm looking at the requirements for a rezoning consideration and the fact that they have been reviewed and met, then I was just taking the approach that as a planning commissioner, if they've been met, then I was trying to see why it wouldn't be. So I'm not an advocate for the applicant. I'm just looking and saying, well, here's the 4 requirements and they've been met.
So I see that they meet our standards to approve this. I do suggest that maybe we table this to allow the applicant to come and see us, because I see a lot of different positions would like to get some direct answers possibly.
And the future land use map is a guide. And so it's not law, which is one of the reasons that I'm not struggling actually with what one of our jobs is, and that is if it meets the law, so to speak, we must approve. Those are guidelines, and I think there are a lot of legitimate questions that are being asked, and I agree with CJ at the very least. Because I don't think, I mean, I agree with CJ. I think the applicant should be here.
I agree too.
I would have preferred it.
I would make a motion to table the application to the next planning commission meeting with the applicant to be in attendance for discussion.
Do we have a
Second,
second? Is that a voice for tabling, Ryan, or is it a roll call?
I would suggest, if I heard the motion the way it is, it sounded like it was requiring the applicant to be here, and I don't know we have the power to do that. I think what you mean is to give them an opportunity
An
to
opportunity.
attend, and I
Comfortable with
suggest
that?
you might want to you would adopt that as a friendly amendment?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Commissioner
Sure.
Lefebvre. And ask that the applicant attend the meeting for discussion. Change the word require to
invite.
yes.
Right.
Thank you.
Sure.
Good change. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Sure.
I'm not sure if that's.
Then just call roll.
Do you mind reading it back to us, please?
Yeah.
Do you mind reading the motion back to us to make sure we
I
got it?
don't have the whole motion.
Okay.
I know you motioned to table to give the applicant an opportunity or invite them back
That works.
For the November meeting. Yep.
for November. Yes.
Boy, I don't know my Roberts well enough to know motions to table need a voice vote or.
We can call roll.
I think
Just
calling
to
roll
see
is
the-
easy.
Okay.
It's easier.
Anderson,
Yes.
Patrick,
Yes.
Broker,
Yes.
Gardner,
Yes.
Gaunt,
Yes.
Lachey,
Yes.
and Mans.
Yes. So we have tabled 120. Our next item on new business is the proposed zoning ordinance text amendments for 154.092 for restaurant and outdoor seating and expanded outdoor dining areas. This also requires a public hearing. So I will call the public hearing on this agenda item and ask at this time if the zoning administrator would give us a summary before we would ask to speak with the applicant.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. No applicant on this particular request. This is being brought forth by staff essentially. Prior to your current zoning regulations require that expanded outdoor dining receive special land use approval by the planning commission. And the zoning ordinance does allow expanded outdoor dining area into the right of way, which historically has been viewed as the sidewalk. And so historically, businesses have applied for special land use approval to operate sidewalk cafes. The planning commission reviewed and approved those items, and then the city council would approve essentially permission to use the space through revocable license agreements. When the pandemic started in 2020, Saugatuck, much like numerous other communities across the state and country, there were a number of emergency orders that were put into place, and a number of a lot of discretion was used as it related to certain regulations that each community had. And so there was Saugatuck allowed dining to essentially expand on the sidewalks as well as into the streets without maybe following the normal zoning practices. So we're kind of in a situation now where we kind of have a hybrid of approvals. And so we have some businesses that had prior zoning approval and then kind of expanded their previous special land use approvals for outdoor dining beyond what they had before, which would trigger a special land use review by the planning commission. And then there's other situations where there's businesses that are now operating expanded outdoor dining on the sidewalk or on the street that don't have special land use approval. And so we raised these issues with the city council earlier this year. The city council authorized continued discretions related to expanded outdoor dining areas throughout the summers and into the fall, with the understanding that staff would work with legal counsel to bring forth some updates to our zoning ordinance and our police powers ordinance, so there's better alignment. And then going forward, all the restaurants would be subject to the new rules going forward. And so what's before you this evening is essentially taking, there's currently a police powers ordinance in the city's code of ordinances that allow for expanded outdoor dining in the street. It takes all of those regulations in the police powers ordinance and puts them into your zoning ordinance. So that way, all expanded outdoor dining, whether it's on the sidewalk or the street, so essentially the right of way, and the right of way is defined that way under your zoning ordinance, all of them would be subject to special land use approval on site plan approval by the planning commission. And then there still would be a requirement that they seek permission from the city council to use the public space and would have to receive a revocable license agreement. So tonight is a public hearing on essentially adopting the addition of the street regulations into your zoning ordinance, and then making a recommendation to the city council on whether or not to adopt these changes. And then if the city council approves, then staff certainly would apply them going forward. One public comment that the historic district chair did reach out to Chair Mans and I, kind of expressing some concern that he had from a historic district perspective about the appearance of some of the expanded outdoor dining areas. That's another board that essentially has some say in these expanded outdoor dining areas as well as it relates to restaurants in the historic district because they impact the exterior appearance. And so I've advised him that going forward, there will be zoning requirements that have to be met, as well as historic district approvals that will have to be met. And then certainly city council approval for any use of the actual public space. Happy to answer any questions, Mr. Chair.
Ryan, would the recommendation of this to move forward be contingent upon adding in the requirement for historic district for anything that falls within the historic district itself?
No, I think if these are coming before you and the applicant has a choice on whether or not they want to start with the historic district commission or start with the planning commission. If they are coming to you first, we could certainly make, you could certainly make approvals contingent upon them also receiving the historic district approval, but I don't know that it's necessary to include historic district approval within your zoning ordinance. I think the historic district ordinance itself already would require the approval.
Okay. We'll open up for public comment at this time regarding this application. If there's anyone in the room that would like to make comments, please come forward, give us your name and address. And if there's anyone online, please raise your hand. In the room, we have one.
Hi, my name's Lindsay Tibbles and the
Thank you.
address is 449 Water Street. And I'm here just to talk about how great outdoor seating is. It's an addition to the town. And we feel like it's not really a hindrance. It serves so many more tourists with outdoor seating. And especially us being right on the water, 90% of the tourists want to sit outside and enjoy the park and the water, the chain ferry. Weather has been nice lately. I know somebody mentioned that we should shorten the time, but our patio is still utilized, every single day for lunch and dinner. So we're advocates for it, and we love the addition that all of them are to the town, being able to sit outside. So one more thing, 4 parking spots, or a handful of parking spots that take up in the town. I don't think that's gonna fix the problem with parking in Saugatuck. I feel like it's never gonna be fixed in Saugatuck because there's never anywhere to park. No matter if there's a restaurant with a patio out there or not, so.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else in the room? Online? Christine?
Can I go ahead? Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Thank you.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. That's Lindsay. She's my new operations manager and I'm flying today, so I didn't know if I was going to be off the plane in time to
Christine,
be on.
Christine,
Yeah.
can you introduce yourself?
Oh, I'm
and
sorry,
your
sorry.
address?
Yeah, 449 Water Street, Wicks Park Bar and Grill. Sorry, my bad. Lindsay is my operations manager. I didn't know if I was going to be on a plane or off a plane, so I wanted to make sure that I had representation there. First, I want to say thank you to the city for accommodating restaurants through the last 3-4 years. I know it's been nothing but a headache mostly. It's been enjoyable for the tourists, but I think on the infrastructure and the side of what you guys do, it has been challenging to say the least, just with people either love it or hate it, but that should be the motto in Saugatuck because that seems to be how it all goes with everything here. So I'm in a very unique spot. Obviously, I'm on the corner. I take up 4 spots. I have the biggest spot there. I totally understand that it needs to be better uniformed and all of that stuff. And I have no problem following all the rules. I just want it to be defined on what rules we need to follow. Like, I am still confused and I like read these things and listen to the meeting. Like, so I'm going to have a public hearing for my spot. I'm going to have to go in front of the historical district to see if they like my setup. Like, how many hoops have to go for this to happen, which I'm fine doing. But I just think it needs to be defined on what the business owners have to do. And I think, I'm just speaking for myself, I have no problem doing it. But we also have to do them now and not in April when we're all scurrying to try to figure this out. I think the outdoor area for everyone is wonderful. I think it limits the time that everyone has to wait for food in town. And we all know that the town isn't slowing down. And this is a great way to keep business in October, of getting business in April, and not having such a downtime in the winter months kind of thing. So obviously, most people know I'm really for this and I'm happy to help. I'm happy to talk through things through. I just want to know like what the guidelines are going to be. I don't want to get something in the mail saying, okay, you have to jump through this and then jump through this and then go talk to this person and then do that. You know, like, I totally get it needs to look nice and all of the things. I just think the business owners need to know what they need to do in order for it to happen. And if there's a slim possibility it's not going to happen, then the business owners need to know about that also. So that's just where I stand, and I appreciate everyone's work all the time on all the things that you have to deal with. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Christine.
Anyone else in the room or online? Seeing none, we will close the public comment section. Ryan already made reference to the Historic Commission, who had sent a correspondence and discussion with each of us. So we close public comment. We move on to commissioners' deliberation.
Just have a question. How busy is the outdoor dining in November? Like, I get October has some really nice days where it's nice to sit outside, but to the comment earlier, especially, more downtown, I think it's probably a little easier to park near Wicks. I mean, do we need to really have it open all of November? And I really don't know. So I'm just asking that as a question.
I gotta check the dates again, but doesn't it say ending November 1st?
It does, because here's where, if you look at the item, item number
Oh, okay, I thought it was
17.
the end of November. My bad.
No expanded outdoor dining area shall operate between November 1st and
Got it.
April 1st
Sorry.
of each year. And I know that came up, but it does kind of, when you read it though, then it says they have until November 10th to take it down, but it has to be gone by November 30th. So it's like they can't operate after November.
You're sweet. I just got it wrong.
No. But I do agree that it is confusing from a standpoint that you have to have your stuff out by you're supposed to have it done by the 10th, but no later than the 30th, but you cannot operate after November 1st. So it's still kind of taking parking spots in
Giving you 10
November.
days to clear it out and then
Yeah.
really giving you 30 to,
Correct.
before you get in trouble.
Why don't you just give 10?
I know.
Yeah,
It could just be, it's done by the 10th.
I agree
as
with.
opposed to November 30th.
Yeah.
In this town.
Yeah.
Yeah, or it's done by the first, yeah.
yeah. I'm
Commissioner
full
Gardner?
support of expanded outdoor dining. I think it's been a benefit of, if you can find any of COVID. We had nothing like this before COVID, and this is in response to some of the extreme conditions that we had to deal with, with lockdowns and so forth. I'm in support of it. I think it's been a great add to the city. A few things that have, from a planning standpoint, as well as from a city council standpoint, that, are top of mind for me is one is I always think about public works impact of anything like this, because when you're talking about being in the street, you have public safety issues, you have snow removal issues, and no one can predict when the snow is going to start or stop here, right? So you can't plan around, well, we think it might snow in October, it might not, or it might snow in April, whatever the case may be. So, but I always think about, okay, what impact is it going to have on our public works staff to be able to do their work? Make it safe and also clear snow if needed and so forth. So when it comes to the dates, I appreciate where, and I had a conversation with Patty Beery on a late evening one night. I was walking home and she happened to be in her store, and I stopped and talked. So I had heard her position, and I have to say, I think there should be some discussion regarding the length of the season. I think the end of September really seems to be a more appropriate, especially given weather changes and so forth. I mean, you're going to get that occasional nice weekend, of course. But at some point, it has to be a practical decision. Okay, at what point do we need to be ready for weather changes, not have this be an impediment to our public works staff? And in the spring, you get some nice weekends in April, but really, I would almost be suggesting that we look at May 1st to September 30th or October 1st. But I'm just one person, so that's my position. Two is that there's no cap on this. So any restaurant in town that chooses to avail themselves of this, there's no limitation, there's no cap. So anybody that wants to do it can do it. So I think that's worth emphasizing. The other thing regarding the Historic District Commission, I personally don't feel this should go to the Historic District Commission. What I think the city should be focused on is some design, not even design requirements, but standard materials for use in the city right of way. I know a lot of other cities, large cities are doing this. They're saying, okay, their rules may be different than ours, but they stipulate the types of materials that can be used for your expanded outdoor dining. That doesn't mean that you can't be creative. That doesn't mean that you can't try to make it look creative. We're not trying to impede that, but we're trying to at least maybe make some guidelines for folks that are, and again, this is still relatively new from a city management standpoint. I mean, we're only in year 4 of this, I think.
Right.
So we're still learning. And I agree with zoning administrator Cummins, is that we're just trying to now get back to center on this. And now we can continue to adjust this moving forward to, accommodate the different things that we may run into, because I view this as being a work in progress.
And I agree with you on many of those points, because one of the questions that I had for whether it be our zoning commissioner or for our legal is if we had a set of standards as to what the requirements are, like we do have, how many feet you can go out from the curb if you're in horizontal, and how many feet if you're in parallel parking. If we have strict standards and those are all met, should we require an applicant to come and file a site plan that would have to come, every one of them have to come before the planning commission? I think it should be able to be, in my opinion, if the standards have been set, it should be administratively approved without making each applicant have to first go and do an application, then get the site plan put together, and then, as one of the owners was saying tonight, have to then come before the planning commission for every one of these. And so that requirement of that it requires a planning commission appearance for a site plan review, I'm uncertain as to why that would be necessary if we had standards. So Ryan or legal, if you can give us an opinion as to.
So, I'll start and then I'll turn it over to Mr. Whitty. I mean, your current regulations for expanded outdoor dining essentially state that an expansion of outdoor dining into the street is considered a special land use. And so a special land use requires a public hearing, and my reading of the zoning enabling act also requires a site plan approval. So if you leave it as a special land use, I mean, certainly you're going to have a public hearing and a site plan approval. If you choose to make it somehow some sort of permitted use or accessory use, then I think there's probably some other options, but I'll turn it over to Mr. Whitty if he has anything to add.
No, I don't necessarily have anything to add to that. I mean, it's been historically regulated as a special land use, except for the kind of emergency policies that were put in place with COVID. I think it's ultimately a policy decision that's probably within the planning commission's purview to keep this as something requiring special land use approval and site plan review. Or if we want to transition to administrative approval, I mean, that's an option.
I'm sorry, did I just understand you correctly that we could transition this to administrative approval and remove the site plan review requirement for each one for coming in front of the planning commission, or did I misunderstand what you just said?
No, I mean, there's no legal requirement to regulate these in any specific kind of way. I mean, as the planning commission, it's your job to figure out how these kinds of uses should be regulated. If you think this is too much detail or overreach, you can certainly suggest a different approach.
And do you know, for example, like the city of Grand Rapids, every single restaurant that wants outdoor dining every year comes in front of their planning commission?
I don't know what the city of Grand Rapids does with that. No.
Or any other city of a size? You have no offhand? I don't mean to put you on the spot. I'm just wondering.
No, I can't say that I've worked with a lot of communities that regulate outdoor dining in this way. I do think that under the framework that we propose in RC, you can correct me if I'm wrong, I don't think this would require annual special land use approval and site plan review. It would just be an initial special land use and site plan
That's true.
review.
Correct.
And then going forward on an annual basis, there'd be a revocable license agreement and an annual fee that would have to be paid. So there's a big lift early on when these are approved and processed, but then moving forward every year, obviously the burden would decrease over time.
Okay.
Jacob, to remove the initial review, we would have to consider this a permitted land use? Is that right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that would be the alternative.
Okay.
Thank you.
But permitting, your permitted land use would be like the restaurant, but the use of public right of way, do you want to add that as a permitted land use? I don't know. So maybe leaving it as a special land use is a better option.
Especially with the one time, in my opinion, that way they have to bring it, they have to show that they know what the rules are.
Correct, there is.
Favor
that?
I favor that, it's leaving a special land use. I favor also doing something with the 30-day allowance that's in there for cleaning up. These aren't huge structures.
Yeah.
We don't need to give them 30 days.
Exactly. And I think you
grab the tables and chairs, stack them, put them away.
put them away.
Right.
And take-
I
and
don't
take
see
down-
anybody really using that time either. I see them come
And
out
you-
pretty much on time because then.
Then you
have to clean
take down the
table.
walls, and I think we could have a discussion on, like several commissioners have already raised, changing the date even from the November 1st. Is it October 1st or October 15th more reasonable? If you had it as an October 15th, then you have to have everything removed and cleared, by the November 1st, that moves it up one full month. Or you just say October 15th and hey, October 16th, everything's out. And I do agree, there's no reason for the April 1st, in my opinion, but.
Yeah, I mean, to Russ's point, especially, I was thinking about this with the March 20th date and April 1st, we can have snow around those
Many times
dates.
we still do.
Yeah.
But when you said earlier about the snow, we can guarantee there will be snow in April, not necessarily in October, but. The other question that Russ raised that I think is a good question for us to ask is, since there aren't caps, I'm just trying to walk around the different areas where there are restaurants to see if we, again, in the, under the umbrella of unintended consequences, if we could jam things up by losing too much parking in any one area. And I think that's worth talking about.
I think it's, yeah, I've looked at that, and for myself, I was thinking, well, we've had 3 years where we've allowed people to pretty much make applications to put in the expanded. And now we're actually putting more requirements in because they would have to now do a site plan and come before us. So my feeling is probably most of the businesses that were interested in having outdoor dining, have already expressed it, or
And there's been a reduction.
Fine.
There's been a couple of places that have no longer,
Decided
because it
not.
hasn't been conducive for their business. The ones that are doing it, they're doing it very well.
right. But you do have to think about, well, what if everyone, but I think that was one of the discussions that council raised during the time that they were allowing it, was what if every restaurant decided? And the decision at that time, was that it would have been appropriate, but now that you're talking about making it official, but it does require further steps, or whether everybody will continue to apply.
I'll just say about the parking thing, there's a lot of pressures on, there's a lot of reasons why there's lack of available parking for tourists in downtown, such as employees of businesses who just park at 9 a.m. and stay until whenever time their business closes. So I think there's a lot of reasons, a lot of pressure on those parking spots besides the restaurants that have outdoor dining, and to single them out, I think would be inappropriate. I, for one, think that it's a real asset to the community of outdoor dining.
Oh, I think we all agree with
So,
that.
and
So
so
it's just a matter of what do we recommend to, council? Do we follow the recommendation as it's been laid out in here, or making any revisions to it?
I'm on board with the shorter season. For example, I hadn't thought about it, but now when I walk around town, yes, strollers are gone, walkers are in. So, yeah, so.
So May 1st to October 15th
Or October 1st.
or October 1st?
You do get some really warm weekends, those first.
I'd
couple
want to
of
keep
October.
October open. I think the 30 days of cleanup is really the part that bothers me the most.
Is it 30 days?
I thought it had to be out by the 10th, but officially by the 30th is what it says. I
Oh,
think
where does it say?
Yeah,
It's
what I'm reading is I'm on page number,
Did I see that?
I saw the 10th on page
page
55.
51.
Oh, 51.
Yeah, I'm on page 51. And the recommended changes allow the expanded outdoor dining area to operate between April 1st and November 1st, consistent with existing regulations that require all items to be removed no later than November 10.
Application wishes to operate city April 1st and November 30th, is where I get the 30th number from.
I know.
And where are you?
I'm
I'm
trying
on
to-
56, item
Trying to
D.
find it because I saw it earlier.
So, and maybe that's my confusion, because I don't think they need 30 days to clean up.
What,
Well, that's where I got November, so that's good.
Yeah.
And that's talking about for the annual fee and for them to
Yeah.
operate. Those just need to be consistent.
Yeah.
yeah.
So I'm on page 51. Is that? what
And
we're
page
supposed to be
56
looking
for
for?
the annual
That's
fees.
what I thought we were supposed to be looking at.
Okay.
Um,
Oh, yeah.
and back to my earlier comment, we are gonna get nice weekends in April, like we get nice weekends all the way through November. The point being though, is that at some point you just have to say, okay, this is the period.
Well, I
And
think
just-
we're all okay,
yeah.
unless I'm
I
misunderstanding.
wanted to go 15 days each way is what I'm wanting to do. It'd be I want to go in half of April and half of October would be my recommendation.
There's Columbus Day in October. It's a huge weekend. Ask all the B&Bs.
Yeah.
It's
when we-
huge.
Yep. Chili cook-off, that's it, absolutely. That's half of
So,
October.
but you don't know what day Columbus Day is gonna fall on.
So maybe May 1 to October 15th, just as
Why
a-
don't you just keep it till October 30th?
We really don't have public comment right now, but it's,
And again,
I know
go
what
back-
it's.
we hear you, but
Yeah, I go back to the city and the municipal services and the public works.
I love the Public Works. I talk to the people every morning and help them. I mean, if it snows, I don't want my stuff out there. I don't want to deal with the snow.
I just,
I
we
mean,
have to
we
ask,
have
I
to-
understand you're very active in it, but we already closed public comment, so if we could just.
I
keep
know,
it to
Steve,
the-
I'm sorry.
I
It
know,
has to
I
go
know.
through October. There's 2 big weekends in October. Everyone picks apples.
Leave it as it is and have it council kind of also, because it really will become the decision of council.
Ultimately, it's council, correct?
Right.
Um,
But we should make a
Should make a
recommendation.
recommendation, I agree.
Yeah.
I can support May 1st through October 15th. And then we also want to make sure that we're clear on the items must be removed within, what I'm reading on page 51 is within 10 days of the end of that period. And cannot be installed more than 10 days before the start of the period.
Right.
So that in effect would be April 20th.
Right, to begin putting it in and then start use May 1st.
Through October.
Yep, and then 10 days after would be October 25th.
I'm kind of going towards the end of, I'm kind of going towards the end of October. I mean,
Halloween.
Halloween, you know, apple picking,
Weekend.
pumpkin collecting,
Well, I mean, maybe just a thought, if we went to the end of October, maybe there's not a need for 10 days to take these down. Which basically puts you into November.
You could have it to where everything has to, they can operate and they're operate, but removal is required by the end of October. So if they want to operate up until that day and remove it that night, they have to the end of the month without the 10 days, but semantics, I realize, but
No, I mean, I think actually that would be fair. I mean,
and if a business decides on the 25th, they want to take theirs down because it takes them 5 days, then that's their So it just becomes a question. Right now, it's currently written April 1st through November 1st.
Yeah, why,
Would we
why
change
provide-
it to May 1st through the end of October?
Yeah, why have a cleanup period at all? Just set, this are the
Right.
dates you can.
This is,
Whatever
as
you
far as
wanna
I'm
do.
concerned,
Yeah.
if you choose to operate on that very last day, you're still responsible for the next morning, that street to be cleared.
that seems reasonable to me.
May 1st, October 31st, done.
Okay,
And
so
that's
in our
cleanup
motion,
and everything.
but in our motion, we would need,
So essentially, there's no cleanup and no setup period.
correct,
Mhm.
right. So then the question, can we approve this
no separate.
with the
setup or-
recommendation for these changes, or these changes have to be made and then have another? Okay. So we could make the recommendation to approve the amendments subject to revisions for May 1st through October 31st.
I'm sorry,
So the
what date is October 31st?
31st.
Okay,
Yeah, sorry.
bad hearing. Just want to make sure I heard you.
I just wanted to make certain if anybody was following.
And just,
That's
yeah,
52.
inclusive of setup or tear down.
Right, because right now, if we were looking at sample motions on page 52, where it talks about recommending the adoption of the amendment,
Right.
we would need to make it subject to the amendment being revised for. So if there's no further discussion,
Do we need to address the historic commission requirement that Brian brought up or not?
Ryan said it would automatically be applied to anybody
okay.
who's within the historic district.
Okay, so it doesn't need to be brought, okay.
So do we have anyone would like to make a motion to either recommend or not to recommend?
Mr. Chair, I move to recommend the adoption of the amendments to section 154.092 paren O and paren of the zoning ordinance to provide expanded regulations pertaining to restaurants with outdoor seating and expanded outdoor dining areas occupying public rights of way or public sidewalks as submitted with the changes of the date to be from May 1 through October 31st, and the removal of a period for any period for tear down
Set up.
and
okay.
setup. Sure.
I second the motion.
So to make sure, that we're not putting a burden on any of the business owners that choose to do this. So essentially, they can begin operating on May first. They can't begin setting up before May first. And then they have to finish use by October 31st and have to be out by October 31st. Is that what we're, right?
Yes, that's how the motion was stated.
Been motioned and seconded. I will ask the clerk for a roll call vote.
Anderson,
Yes.
Patrick,
Yes.
Broker,
Yes.
Gardner,
Yes.
Gaunt,
Yes.
Lachey,
Yes.
and Mans.
Yes. Passes with those revisions. That concludes the public hearing. So we close the public hearing regarding outdoor dining. Moving on to item 4 on our agenda, the waterfront development. This is in your packet starting on page 59. And I believe, Dave, are you going to be the one who kind of walk us through the summary?
How are we okay for time? Would you like me to just walk through just a high level summary or
Yeah,
you want to walk through one by one?
I think we can probably, I mean, everyone's had an opportunity to read through his report.
Yep.
So I don't think we really need to spend, the time unless you just want to give us kind of a high level, but I would like to kind of address things one by one because I do think that I have a number of comments, especially on the very first summary proposal.
Yes, Mr. Chairman. Number one has to do with the zoning district regulation. As you recall, I believe our conversation was in August when I presented a few different options for using an overlay district to regulate and restrict uses on the waterfront. I think the other option was to keep the regulations in Water Street South and Water Street North. So we'd have similar regulations or restrictions in both districts. The other one was a mandatory PUD, which we thought was a little bit of an overreach at that point. And then, so we came down to the final recommendation based on our September conversation was to create a new zoning district, which would take Water Street North and Water Street South, combine them into one district. Now, with that, we heard a public comment or two tonight about the Water Street East, and I think those comments are very well taken, very appropriate. We did add those in as a way to since pretty much all of 80% of Water Street North is being eliminated and it's being put into the downtown waterfront preservation district. The idea was to absorb that eastern side of Water Street North into the Water Street East zoning district. So with that, I had said at the time that there are some differences between these districts, obviously. Really the main difference is going to be the 65% lot coverage in Water Street East and the 10-foot side and rear setbacks. So those are a bit stricter in Water Street East. So if you apply that to those properties that are north, they would be subject to stricter requirements. Now for single family and single family, it's kind of a wash. The lot coverage is actually higher. So you go from 50 to 65%.
Correct.
The setbacks for single family residential are all pretty much the same. except for the front goes from 15 to 10, side goes from 5 to 10, and rear is 10 to 10. So it's kind of a, one is up, one is down. And so it's important to consider those dimensional requirements as well as land use. So my comment, basically hearing the comments tonight and just thinking about the intent of this project overall, I would have no issues if we just kept Water Street North east of Water as it is. I think we've had representation from those owners tonight. So it was a bit outside of our original scope and project area. Obviously, we're not bound to only touch that area, but I think we had a reason for it at that time, but I think after further review that there may be a reason to take it out.
Correct, because that's one of the things I was going to ask is instead of eliminating Water Street North, we make Water Street North District just the east side of the street, basically those 9 parcels. And then anything that's on the waterfront becomes part of the waterfront district. So we would still have Water Street South.
Water Street South would be eliminated. Waterfront North would be retained, but it would only apply to the east side of Water Street.
Right.
I think about 7 or so parcels, but including the townhomes.
Well, that's correct, because Water Street South, the east side is already a different district. The Water Street South.
It's essentially 2 blocks that
Not
front
really.
Water Street.
So I'm sorry.
Well, basically, everything that's in Water Street South is a waterfront parcel, from what I can tell on my map,
Yes,
existing.
all of Waterfront South.
So all we're really doing is making everything that's along the waterfront part of the new district.
Yes, correct.
And then David, C2, which is Water Street East, would remain as it is,
Yes, Yes.
which encompasses those 7 or there's 9 properties.
yes, correct. Yeah, and we never proposed any dimensional changes or land use changes for Water Street East, just simply that we were thinking about redesignating a number of parcels to Waterfront East.
And there was what I was saying earlier. If we were to look at making that part of Water Street East, I think that we would need to look at Water Street East zoning and determine, is it consistent with the parcels that we were trying to move into it? And what negative impact would that have in regards to that? And so that would be everything from permitted uses, which there's only really 2 permitted uses that are different between those Water Street East and Water Street North. And that is the short-term rental restriction for 2nd and 3rd floor. And the fact that the Water Street East currently says single-family dwelling, whereas the other 2 neighboring zones allow for a single-family and 2-family. But I do think that maybe an easier way about it is just to not merge, but just remove all waterfront properties in Water Street North and then leave Water Street North to be everything that's east and currently zoned as Water Street North. Until we have a time to really go back and look at the complete zoning, because I do think that as you start talking about zoning changes, the ramifications can become greater. And even though we've discussed it for a number of years, the need to kind of maybe condense our zones, I feel that these type of issues will continue to come up as you're trying to look at it. And it's hard to look at just one change, because again, if you make one, then you got to say, well, now we got to look at Water Street East to make certain that it doesn't, that it still satisfies all the things that we're looking for. And then that leads to, well, should it really be Water Street East or should it be the CER district, a residential 4? And it's.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman Manson. Thank you, David. Just to kind of revisit why we were making this decision, we have some policy, or not some policy goals. We have some goals as the planning commission is to reduce the number of districts, and also, I think, to make the districts represent the actual space. And my thought was everything east of Water Street should be in a different district. It's not waterfront, but not really having, the process has worked. people have reached out to me. I've gone and talked with them, and has changed my mind about maybe that intent was overstepping boundaries. And I'm learning from this. So again, this is just another example of where we, had good intentions, but we got feedback and, I agree with your proposal. I've learned from this.
Yeah, I think too, if we were doing this again, just asking ourselves if we've reached out to the people who would be impacted so that they would get a heads up and have an opportunity to, I mean, thank goodness, it all worked out, but we should think about the process so that we don't do that again.
Yeah, I would
Well,
agree.
I think it's, yeah, because I would totally agree. It was something that after it got written, and I'm going back and reviewing what are the differences and understanding there are differences between it. So you do have to factor in, is this something we should just throw out as a recommended proposal? And I think we've all heard that no, it should be considered differently.
And I guess to that point, I just wanted to understand what our process is here tonight. I kind of came in hoping to better understand and have some questions answered about these proposed regulations, but assuming we wouldn't necessarily vote on them tonight, we might have feedback or red line edits to propose but I don't know, was that incorrect?
No, I think what we were trying to do tonight is to give the guidance as so that they could write the proposal, so we could actually ask for a public
Okay.
hearing by the November
Yeah.
19th meeting. But we would need to have the ordinance and proposal drafted between now and then. Is that correct, David?
Yes, yes. So we have draft language that we would have to put into official ordinance format
Okay.
to amend the zoning ordinance.
Okay,
But really, the language that you see in the document is what would be in that ordinance.
Okay.
Unless amended tonight.
okay.
What's in here, what you kind of highlighted,
What's highlighted?
What was,
Yes.
would have been what you're proposing. And then, so basically what we have now talked about at a minimum would be to revise the proposal number 1, which was the absorption of C1 Water Street North into C2 Water Street East. It's like on page 59. So that one would be removed. So you'll have to go back and then revise what's been drafted accordingly.
Yes, and the only difference, I had to strike Water Street North from this document, so
Right.
I'm just going to
Put it back in.
reject the changes that,
Mhm.
the red line document. And then we haven't done any mapping yet, so there'd be no mapping to amend.
Right. So instead of like 38 becoming reserved, it stays Water Street North. And would only relate to those parcels that are on the east side.
David, why would we not make Water Street West, or I misspelled Water Street West, that's not what it's called, but the Seaport Resort District on the west side of the river, part of the new waterfront area?
Well, we just felt that it had different characteristics in the priority. Some of the priorities on this side were to ensure the walkability, public access views. And so obviously we can't really create a walkable waterfront boardwalks on the other side of the river. So the number of requirements that are applicable to that are certainly a lot less. I think the 60% building width requirement really, I think, addresses the view shed to the river from the other district, C4. But otherwise, I wanted to also suggest tonight that when we have I added special use standards that would be applicable to special land uses within the waterfront district. But I had referenced the new waterfront district. I think we can do the same thing for C4 if you're open to that. That would give you more discretion on the land uses in C4 for special land use review, so.
So it'd just be adding it'd be adding special land use to the C4, similar to what we're adding special land use for the waterfront preservation district.
Correct. So in the waterfront district, we've moved pretty much 99% of the uses to special land use.
That's what I
So
saw.
that gives us ability to look at it one by one on a case by case basis. And we consider our special land use standards, which we apply to all, as well as the supplemental standards that only apply to waterfront, as well as, I think it makes sense to do it for C4 based on that comment. So I think what I would do then is similarly,
Yeah, because I actually think a lot of these would be important for C4 visually, just aesthetically. Like the half roof, half story. The design standards.
So underneath on page 68 in our kit, which is section 154.037, the C4 Resort District, you would add language in similar to item C underneath the Waterfront Preservation District for the special land use.
yes, did you say 154.038?
037.
037 would be the C4. So right now, the only change that's been recommended for the C4 district was the 60% of lot width.
Yes,
But so we would then add in the requirement for special land use.
correct. So under 37B, we could move some of those, well, I guess now that we're looking at it, central public services, say permitted, bed and breakfast and short-term rental unit, you could consider those, but I'm not sure if those uses are intense enough to warrant special land use review, but if you would like to push them to special, we can certainly do that.
No, I see already, we've got special land uses
Yeah,
in
yep.
C4, you're correct.
So it is interesting to note that 37C does include probably about 80% of the uses, maybe more,
Correct.
as special land uses. So it's we almost did
Because it's like
similar.
in the waterfront, we only allow essential public services to operate or to be approved without special land use.
Yes.
So it'll just be a question of do bed and breakfasts and short-term rental units require special land use in in C4?
And why wouldn't we require that? Since we do on the other side of the river.
Correct. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah,
That's what I'm
right.
basically
I mean,
throwing it out. To me, it seems like
It,
if it's permitted use on the waterfront preservation, the new district is essential public services only, then why wouldn't C4 have permitted use of essential services only and everything else would be special land use?
that makes sense.
So I think we have a consensus on that, David.
The other question that comes up and was brought up by a couple of citizens that talked to me about this, the item 3 under number 5, section 154.038 downtown waterfront preservation district. Item 3 increased the minimum lot size to 1/4 acre, which just on the face of it sounds like a 1/4 acre sounds like it's about 10,000 square feet. But the point being is that going to, that's still in play in terms of our plan, right?
And I have a question on that also.
Yeah, and so,
Because what's the smallest that we have within that zone currently?
right,
I think it's dramatically less than 10,000
it is,
square feet.
yeah.
And I know our intention may be to get it to be larger, but there's a number of
1/4 acre
parcels.
just captures people's.
Sure,
Capture
capture mine.
Right, so.
You know, I could see it be a minimum with a smaller number, but then a higher lot coverage. I think 45% lot coverage is very small. I can see 45% lot coverage if I have a 1/4 acre minimum. And this is. And I know this was the difficulty because I didn't have the actual dimensions without going to tax records and pulling up every property. But when I think of the properties that are along the waterfront, definitely the ones that are in the old Water Street North, very few of them would have, other than a couple like the, the Shipman Shore, but most of the other ones wouldn't be a quarter of an acre, I don't believe. I know for certain the two that were for sale that they were looking at, neither one of them would have hit that.
And I think the concern that I have about this is that what's the impact going to be on the properties that are already there by increasing it? The minimum lot size of a quarter acre. To your point, I think, is that, again, a substantial number of properties that are already will be immediately out of compliance.
That's right.
What will be the long-term impact of that? If I'm asking the question correctly, just trying to anticipate what the effect of this would be.
With the raising the minimum lot size.
Yeah, to a quarter acre.
I think the idea was, so as you were talking, I think I was paying attention here to this original report back from July 17th. That was when we had the inventory of parcels. So about 80% of those parcels are a quarter acre or more. So part of that was to just be consistent with what's mostly out there. Second, if we do have some of these larger parcels, which I believe the largest are 3/4 of an acre. There's actually 3 in a row that are 3/4 of an acre.
Wow.
So yeah, we didn't want those to be split up into parcels that were 4,000, 6,000 square feet. We want them to be able to, redevelop with a building, a reasonable sized building, and still be able to meet the new side setbacks, especially for Water Street South.
So David, what would happen, like right now, the Water Street North had a minimum lot size of 4,560. So I could have buildings that met that. And then if the new waterfront was 10,000 and they wanted to change hands, what is the impact? Or are they non-conforming and they would stay non-conforming?
Yeah, yes, minimum lot size for our purposes is only to create new lots or to combined really isn't not applicable. So if we're adjusting lot lines or creating new lots, we would ensure that they are at least a quarter acre. But other than that, it's really no effect
everything
on
is
any of the properties.
grandfathered. Okay.
Yes.
Now, what if they wanted to combine two 4,500 square foot lots, which would only be 9,000 total? Would it still be acceptable even though doesn't meet the minimum?
In my opinion, yes, because you're increasing the degree, you're decreasing the degree of nonconformity.
Okay. Well, then,
Yeah, this is helpful to walk through this to help me understand.
Correct.
that. Yeah.
It's on a train headed east at 45 miles an hour.
That's a good one.
so okay, so the quarter acre is more to do with the parcels that are existing that are larger than a quarter acre, stopping them from doing multiple splits and creating 5 or 6 smaller lots because it's currently zoned to where they could do that.
Yes, that seemed to be what he,
Right.
that's what I had.
That's what I'm hearing.
heard
I'm
him
just
say.
trying to reiterate because I'm thinking this through because I had a question on that quarter acre. I was thinking that everything would have to adhere to it. I'm like, well, what do we do if we've got 10 parcels that don't adhere to it, but they would be grandfathered?
And I believe there's always the ability to go in front of the ZBA and seek a variance.
But I guess,
But the ones that are already existing are grandfathered in, so.
but I'm just trying to think through, like, because how I says, it's like, what are the potential consequences? And if I'm just thinking of these 2 parcels that are smaller than the quarter acre that have been currently for sale. And so now I have this new requirement that says they could have up to, 45% or whatever the percentage of lot coverage that were previously in a district that said 100%. So are they subject, if they wanted to redevelop, are they subject to the new restrictions? of the waterfront, or are they grandfathered to the 100% lot coverage that they had when they were Water Street North?
All properties would be subject to the new waterfront district. Even if they're, even if those were split off or combined or adjusted.
So I think in this example, if those two lots were sold and it was asked to be combined and they were less than the quarter acre, 10,000 some odd feet, they'd have to go for a variance, essentially, right?
They could be combined, but could they be developed at 100%, or would they have to be developed at 45%? Because the new requirement for a quarter acre type of minimum is 45%, but they're less than a quarter acre, so would they be held that same 45%? Or would they be, should we have something in here that says if they are currently under, they are allowed a different lot coverage? Because I look at this and I'm thinking, if I owned either one of those parcels that are substantially smaller than a quarter of an acre, and all of a sudden I'm told that, yes, I can continue to have that as a parcel with an exception that it's not a quarter of an acre, but if you want to redevelop it, you can only have a 25% or 45% lot coverage. Those lots are pretty much unbuildable then. Because a couple of those lots are only 4,000 square feet.
Well, it depends on what side of Francis Street you're on. So the north, we don't have there is no maximum lot coverage north of Francis within the new district.
Well, I see, oh, I'm sorry, you're correct. I was looking at south. You're right. Maximum lot coverage is 0.
So no requirement north of Francis, and then south would be 45% lot coverage, which is the same as Water Street South.
Lot coverage to the north is what in the new water?
There's no requirement in the new proposal.
Yeah, it's on
But
page 59.
but we have the side setbacks. The side setbacks would come into.
Correct. So if you look at page
Right.
71, you, in our kit,
That's, yep.
he's got the side setback at 5 feet,
I remember from
20
September now.
feet, and then the combined of 20 feet minimum, if you look at both.
So they would
documents.
have a greater restriction than today, because today they're 100 and go line to line. They would have to provide the setbacks. So
Right.
that would be the difference.
There is no, but yes, so the 45, that's right, I was incorrect. That's only for the south.
And that's the reason why we just put 2 dashes instead of 100% for.
There's
North
no
of Francis,
requirement.
it might be deceiving. Someone may think they're able to do 100% when the setbacks are going to result in a lower lot coverage.
Okay. Now, what is rest of the commissioner's feeling on, I mean, I know that Water Street South has always had 45% coverage. If they meet the setbacks, 45% seems very low when I look at other cities.
We discussed that last time, and where I got around it, because I agreed with you that I thought that was low. We left it as they could do a PUD and get some advantages if, as they negotiate,
That's true.
leaving that public land. That's how I got around it in my head.
And that was correct, right, David?
Yes.
I don't want to move away from this if there's still questions. I did have some other questions, but
Absolutely, go ahead.
okay. David, the half-story definition that was added, I'm sorry, I couldn't figure out where that was incorporated into the body of the regulations, like why we added that. I was thinking it was part of the requirement for the downtown waterfront preservation district, but now I'm not seeing it. Maybe I previously saw it. No.
It should be the 7th page in. Right there. You just turned it.
Oh, okay. Yes.
Yeah.
So we have a definition.
Yes.
And what
Where is
page,
it?
what page are you on?
Oh, I'm on page 67.
67.
Yeah, we have a definition,
Great, thank you.
but then I
Thanks.
guess I was assuming that was added so it could be a requirement somewhere.
Well, I think if, there's a question of where does it make a reference to?
Right.
In really all of our districts, I believe we have a 2.5 story maximum.
It would apply in all districts.
I see, okay.
Got it.
And we dropped this in here because we didn't have a good definition. of what-
Okay. Okay.
No, actually, I think that is something that we need to add to both. So I think that's a good catch because right now the survey results clearly said 2 to 2.5.
Right.
Was the most appropriate. And the reason why we have that half story defined, and this could, it becomes a third story with the,
Mm-hmm.
uh,
Yeah.
when you have more than 50% of the dormers, it just becomes a kind of it's a cheat third floor in a way.
Right.
And we've seen that on Water Street.
I see. And people call it a half
Yeah.
unless it's clear in the definition that it's not. Okay, that makes sense. And then,
Wouldn't that apply to all zones? So that's why it's in the glossary.
I'm sorry?
Wouldn't that apply to all zones, which is why you're adding it into the
Yes.
glossary? Okay.
yeah, and then we need to add it into these too as well.
Right.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yep.
And then just another quick drafting question, hopefully, section C on page 73. I just wanted to confirm that should be there and not a page or two earlier.
Now, one of the things that in our kits, you guys, I took me a while to figure this out. These pages are not consecutive.
Oh.
So like where
okay.
page 72 ends, that's Water Street East continues. That next page is section 15482, which is special land use. So if you go into our actual binders with all the zoning, so these were changes that were being made to the special land use. It had nothing to do with the stuff that was.
Oh, yeah, I guess I thought it seemed like it
Yeah.
fit in with the downtown waterfront preservation district.
Yeah.
No?
So like.
In my effort to reduce the number of pages, I think I maybe have caused some confusion.
Because
So,
same thing
uh,
happens
the-
over here, like when you go from page 72 to 73, this page relates to special land use, which is section 154.082.
Right.
Same way when you go to the next page on page 74, that is plan unit development
Right.
as opposed to, so he kind of just, the pages, he pulled where he's making changes, but you actually have to go back to the actual zoning ordinances to figure out where that fits in.
Okay, so,
They told us we had to do. that.
okay,
know.
so this is,
Or should I figure it out?
this is
It's
not
because
part of 154.038
I spent
downtown
about,
waterfront. Okay,
half hour sitting there going, what is
it's
this?
part of, this would go under,
154.082. So you go, which is
082.
the special land use requirements.
oh, I see, okay.
From that.
And so that's what's referencing that we have that special land use.
Right, because it
all of
says,
this.
it was confusing because it says, yeah, special land uses.
I know.
Yeah, okay.
But-
Okay,
Trust- I was right there with you.
And on that page, that's where I suggested to also add in C4 resorts.
got it. So now,
Yes.
okay, so
correct.
now C4 Resort would have this.
Go into there.
Yes, so it says, in addition to the aforementioned standards, special land uses within the downtown waterfront preservation district and the C4 resort district are
Yeah.
subject to the following supplemental
Supplemental
standards.
Okay,
And then in the C4 district where it had three of the permitted uses, we changed that to just be in the one and the other two become part of the special land use.
Yes, yes.
and then David, I just had one other quick question. This is my last question, but the Water Street Commercial District, is
Oh,
that
yes.
going to be incorporated into the new?
That district actually
was
doesn't
already-
exist anymore on the map.
That doesn't exist
already
anymore. I have an old
incorporated
map.
Same
Okay,
thing.
okay.
That was another one of those. I've
Okay.
been saying this for a while.
And was that absorbed into Water Street North?
It was
or-
more absorbed into Water Street South, I believe.
Okay, I was thinking that might be.
It's Water
what
Street
this-
South,
Yeah,
south of Francis.
okay.
But yeah, it got away and it's just, but yet it still shows up on our zoning map.
Yeah, because even online it was showing, okay, Okay.
I was looking for the
I went for
requirements
that
of
with
Water
Cindy.
Streets zoning
Yeah.
district when I first opened the code and wasn't there.
It's not there. Okay, well, that explains it.
And somehow the zoning ordinances got rewritten, but the zoning map
The
didn't.
map didn't.
That's what
Yep.
Cindy told me like 4 years ago when I was trying to find it.
Okay.
I do think we should update the zoning map. Well, the zoning map will be updated if we have this new addition of the waterfront anyway.
Make sure it's updated correctly.
Correct. If we have this, if this goes forward and it is finally approved, then the zoning map would obviously be updated to reflect the new zones.
Yes.
As,
Yes.
we don't have to make that a separate requirement because again, somehow the zoning map wasn't updated when they made the last change.
Yes, yeah, there'll have to be a zoning map amendment as part of the project.
Okay.
Okay.
And so with that, we would have to notice property owners, post the addresses in the newspaper. There are some exemptions in the zoning enabling act. When you're dealing with 11 or more parcels, it exempts you from certain, noticing requirements like the 300-foot buffer, notification. And actually putting all the addresses in the public notice itself. But since we're dealing with a really limited number of addresses, and I would suggest in the notice, we just itemize out all applicable parcels addresses.
But that would be an amendment that would be required so that we make certain that the zoning map is updated.
Yes.
Gotta be sure we capture the little thing if we change that too.
Going now with the C4 on the last page of our kit, or not last page, but of your part of the kit, page 80, which relates to that's last page relates to section 154, 131, which is the exception to off-street parking requirements. And currently, we have that would need to be revised, obviously, because we're still going to have Water Street North.
Yes.
And would C4 be subject to that?
No. Yeah, I think the idea was to keep because parking requirements are usually waived in downtown environments. I think it's just
Right.
difference of a context to have that waiver. So for instance, some of the larger properties, your newer apartments, they do have on-street parking or under. And the one redevelopment site, Casa Loma, that site does have enough room for on-street, off-street parking.
Okay.
And with just a narrow 2-lane road, we wanted to be able to
Right.
account for those visitors and residents.
I just want to make sure we didn't overlook a place where we have to put it back in.
Yeah.
Hey. And I think I did like the addition underneath the regulation flexibility on page 77, just like CJ and others were talking about, where it gives us that flexibility that if they are providing, full access to the waterfront, that would be part of the flexibility. So again, it goes back to if they want it more than that 45%, give them the flexibility that if they're adding in boardwalks or walkways, that could be considered an item that would be rational for us to give them some flexibility in the building.
Yes.
And I know it's,
First, we wanted to also remove the minimum lot size for PUD. So there's really no minimum lot size in this, the new district waterfront, downtown waterfront preservation. And the benefits of Throughout this, we are really weaving together some of our waterfront priorities statements. So the intent and purpose statement for PUD is 154,110. We added in the, really the benefit statement of to preserve views of the Kalamazoo River and incentivize the provision of public waterfront access and pedestrian facilities.
Now, David, relating to that item C underneath special land use,
What page are you on?
page 73. And I apologize if this has already been asked, it's getting late. Were we going to add in, because right now we have in there, the design aesthetics and then the waterfront protection development property shall have with the C4. Also, so would it be the waterfront protection development and C4 that would implement strategies for shoreline protection, ensure waterfront structures are resilient, and avoid impact to water ecosystems? See where I'm at?
Sorry?
So in these, on the page where you had the addition of C,
Yes,
which is underneath
the
the one
supplemental standards.
54.82. We currently, underneath C2, we say the waterfront protection development of property shall. Does that relate to just the waterfront zone, or does that relate to the waterfront zone and C4? Because,
I
because the
think what we
C
s-
says
yes.
waterfront preservation district are subject to the following.
I think since we're adding C4 in there, I think that's a good catch. We
So I think,
should.
I think C4 should be part of
Yeah.
Yeah,
of that required, especially since that's where the design and aesthetics comes in.
So the applicability C4 only waterfront parcels.
Correct. So I think that was the last of my comments.
And they would apply to all of our new districts, not just waterfront.
I'm impressed how sharp everybody's still remaining after.
So am I. Thank God I did take the time to put all, that's why I'm just flipping through right now to make sure I
It's a lot. to
picked this
absorb.
up from Sarah
Yeah.
because I said I'm gonna need some time to put all my comments in here.
David, can we, I assume we can, and maybe this is a question for Ryan, that we can, as we're looking at this with all this very helpful information, that we can reach out if we have quite specific questions as we're going through it.
Well, this is gonna be a question for Ryan, because I know that we're not doing a vote or anything here tonight. But how comfortable do we have to be that we would want to call a public hearing, or do we want to see this revised and present it in front of us at the November meeting before having a public hearing? There's a lot of changes here.
A lot of changes and I did have a hard time following a couple of
Yes.
things. So
Well, because
that I might need some time.
And truthfully, I recognized it about 4:30 today, so I didn't have time to reach out to give everybody else a heads up about how the pages didn't
Yeah.
Right.
follow.
Very helpful to know.
Yeah,
Nice
because
to
it
figure
threw
out.
me off. So that's why I had to get this book out. I hope that often, but I was like, where did this?
I will send you the full zoning ordinance with changes tracked.
Perfect.
So
Oh,
the
perfect.
current ones are tracked.
Right.
So you'll see every word and section that's changed. And then the rejections, certain ones I'm going to reject, obviously the removing Water Street North.
Correct,
So
correct.
some that are struck, I'm going to put back
Yes.
in.
I mean, I don't want to delay the process, but at the same time, I would feel more comfortable myself if I saw the completed draft before I call a public hearing, but I'm only speaking for myself. Ryan, what are your thoughts?
Mr. Chair, it's totally up to you as a planning commissioner, what you're comfortable with, or, if you feel like you need, another meeting to review the changes from today, that's fine. Just for practical purposes, I'll just note that your moratorium is scheduled to, expire at the end of the year. If you wait until your next meeting to review these changes and then schedule a public hearing for December, we would, assuming that the planning commission thinks a moratorium should stay in place, we'd have to ask city council to extend that.
So Ryan, what we could do, we could still have the public hearing, have the new proposal, the new recommendations in the kit. And then if there's some change that we saw before we recommend it to city council, we could make it subject to any final changes at our November meeting and then send it forth to city council. Okay.
Correct.
Yes.
Can we make small edits at the public hearing is what I think I hear you saying.
Right.
I believe we can, yeah.
Yeah.
So we'd be able to say, we approve this subject to adjusting
Right.
X, A, B, or C.
Yeah, and could we get this in adequate time to give us?
Correct.
Adequate time for those of us who don't naturally.
Like me waited to the last minute.
Well, I mean, and for me, quite frankly, I mean, it takes me a long
know.
time to coordinate this stuff because it doesn't come naturally to me. So if we could get it more than 2 days ahead of time,
Just
I mean,
making certain that this part of it, we see it at least that 5 days, which
Yeah.
this one came out, I was out of town, so that's why I didn't get back till late last night.
Yeah, and it sounds like David's gonna deliver this in a version which will match the zoning ordinance itself, so
Exactly.
I think it'll be.
So
more
it's easier to
quickly-
follow, yes.
Yep.
And
I will send
and again,
full document.
and even if you don't send the full document, it's just kind of like noting, you know, like if it ends and all of a sudden you jump forward 5 sections, it's like this
Give us
is
the
the
header.
addition
Give
to
us the
Right.
header, yeah.
eat the complete section that you're had any revision, that complete section's there. But I think it's otherwise, with those changes, I would be comfortable just seeing it at our next meeting then.
Mhm. Oh, yeah.
I'm okay with that.
Okay, so the plan is that we will have a public hearing at our November meeting, November 16th meeting.
Like
And then,
this.
yeah,
Mhm,
and then if we see additional changes in the new version, we'll verbally add them.
mhm.
Perfect.
Mr. Chairman, on the side, I think, I will, look at that 1/4 acre minimum and just, see, I want to assess that a bit more, just based on the concern with that.
Yeah, thank you.
I think it's a little large.
Thank you. And before we conclude the conversation, the communication was, we clearly missed the boat on communication on this, in my opinion. Though I know we met the regulations, I think we have an opportunity to go beyond that to make sure that people do get clear communication from the city on this. So I just put that out there as something I think we need to improve on.
Yes.
And I don't know exactly what that looks like. It's just, I think we missed the mark on this one.
Yeah, I think just being clear about, because my sense from the discussions and what we had gotten is that nobody would be affected. And so,
And I would agree with you, and I think that's one of the reason why I was kind of hesitant about even calling a public hearing until we do see it, was to make certain that we all have had a chance to review. Because when we've initially talked about saying, well, we'll just make east side of Water Street North go into Water Street East, it took a while to really look at it and compare all of the different requirements. And so I do agree, you know, we probably put that out as a proposal before we had a chance to really look at it ourselves or to hear from the public.
Yeah,
And
it
so
was
the
not
public-
intent, yeah, it
Yeah,
was
it
not
was-
intentional in my
No,
opinion.
because we actually thought they were very similar, but it ended up being substantially different.
I mean, actually, and no, I mean, we're learning. But we were told, because I went back and because it's not like us, and I'm like, how did that happen?
And I
Yeah.
think that there
We-
was,
I mean, they were called out and we
Yep.
were told essentially that, it wouldn't affect.
and the one thing that some of the people who have reached out to myself and some that are here in the room, I do appreciate the fact that they did bring it to our attention and had us kind of take a closer look. And it wasn't intentional, but at the same time, and I always think, well, there's a public meeting, and there's an opportunity for you to voice, but if you weren't even aware of it, then how do you know that you need to come to the public meeting or to make your voices heard? So to anyone listening or anyone here in the room, your point was well made, and I think you're hearing it from all the council or all the commissioners here. All right, then we will close out item 4. The only other item that was next item was that,
Anything to table that or no?
Ryan, there was no motion that was going to be necessary for that, correct?
just a consideration. As
Consideration.
I read the agenda, it's just a consideration. of the
Exactly, for the
draft.
language.
Right.
And then for us to agree to, that we want to have a public hearing. And that doesn't, we don't have to have a vote for the public hearing, do we, Ryan? We just,
You know, I like the votes when you set public hearings, but I don't think there's any legal requirement. You can correct me if I'm wrong on that.
there's not, okay. Because I mean, we can easily make a motion to do it, but if it's not required, we won't. Okay, great. Communication, we didn't have anything in the packet. I hadn't received anything other than the communication that we heard from the historic district. Report of officers, Ryan's report is inside the kit. Ryan, I don't know, given the time, if you want to say anything in particular about your zoning administrative activity report, or if anybody has any questions for Ryan in regards to it. Seeing
Yeah, I have
none,
nothing in particular to highlight, Mr. Chair, but I can answer questions.
I don't think we have any at this point. So we're going to move on to our final public comment. This can be on anything that you would like to address the planning commission on. At this time, you would just come up to the microphone, give us your name and address, and limit any of your comments to 3 minutes or less. Is there anyone at this point that in the room? Seeing none. I do see one online. Would you please identify yourself, and that would be Christine, please.
Thank you. 449 Water Street. I do apologize for going off agenda and not following the rules. I guess my concern when it comes to public hearings is I don't know what was going to be discussed and changed when it comes to dates. I mean, those are big changes. So I guess, I mean, I know there's still another vote that has to go to council, but I guess that's why I was upset, because I feel blindsided as a business owner that dates are getting changed, and maybe the council doesn't know, or the commission doesn't know, like, what are big weekends in town. So that's where my frustration was. I appreciate all that you do for the city and stuff. So I do apologize for not being so adult-like. So, but I was blindsided. So, and then I didn't know when to speak again about why those dates would be important to the town. And also in April, that's when everyone in Chicago is on spring break. So everyone that has houses here, they bring their kids up, or something like that. So April, there is a little boost in business. And if the weather's nice, but none of us have a crystal ball, so we don't know those things. So, I mean, if the businesses want to put them out and they want to pay for the month in April, take the money, do it. I don't see why that would hurt anything. Just the few days you knocked off, I don't understand why that would even be beneficial to the parking and all the things. So, but I do apologize for being not an adult. So sorry about that. And thank you guys.
No, Christine, thank you. And I think it does become part of that gray area as to if you start talking about date changes, are you really changing it enough to where it would require a second public hearing, or is it just a minor altercation? Because we can make minor altercations within a public hearing, but is that considered a major? And so your point is very well taken, and we will take a look at that. Any other public comments? Seeing none, we'll close out public comments for tonight's meeting. Any commissioner comments? Go around the board. CJ, Mark,
Nothing. No, thank you.
Ollie, Russ.
No, thank you.
No.
Seeing none, do we have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Yes.
Yes.
Those opposed? Thank you. It's been a long night.